This is Kim Meyer, host of Choose to Rise. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media.
What's up, everybody? This is Christian Heimel, host of Press Row here on Public House Media. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media. Once you're done with this episode, I hope you'll come check out my show, Press Row, where we talk about the biggest issues in sports with the analysts, experts, and reporters who cover them. No nonsense, hard-hitting interviews on the sports topics you're talking about. A new show comes out every single Thursday. And don't forget to subscribe on iTunes so you never miss an episode of Press Row. Thanks again for checking out the following broadcast on Public House Media.
How do baseball players stay cool? They sit next to fans. Welcome to Completely Serious. That's listener Carrie Goodwood with that contribution. Thank you, Carrie, and your support of the show where we have fun and talk sports. We are ankle deep in the month of July. Yes, July is here. We are trudging through the muck and mire of the summer to bring you a very special episode of Completely Serious, the show. I've said it once, I've said it 100 times, I'll say it again, where we have fun and talk sports. But first, I need to break out the broom and do some house cleaning. I missed last week's episode, really last month. The last month we haven't had an episode because I was hauling my computer and a couple shirts, and that was it. Did not bring any pants or underwear. I had to go out and buy that. That was awkward. To Washington, D.C., where I moved for good. I moved for life. Well, we'll see how long I'm here. Anyway, and I was unable to record the last scheduled podcast 2 weeks ago, but we are back this week. We are back and better than ever as we are keeping it here on Public House Media and the Public House Media family with the podcast and sports savant Keith Hoehne. Keith is the host of multiple shows, exquisite podcasts on Public House Media. And Keith, you host the Wednesday version of the Cheap Seats, and you also host Coffee with Keith and Katie. And this week you're on Completely Serious, so 3 podcasts in 1 week must be a Public House Media record.
Ryan, appreciate you having me on, man. Yeah, Coffee with Keith and Katie, I do with my wife Katie, and we've been doing that for a while now. I'm just a new member of the Cheap Seats on Wednesday, and I've been a guest host and a guest on a number of other shows as well. So I've made my way around the Public House Media, areas quite a bit.
You had an episode, Keith, where you and your wife Katie debated about how to make the proper peanut butter and jelly, and you used like 8 slices of bread on yours. So I have to say, I think Katie wins, but justify your use of an entire loaf of bread for 1 peanut butter and jelly.
It's 3 pieces of bread. I do peanut butter sandwich on one. I make a jelly sandwich on the other, and then they share 1 common piece of bread. So you got the PB and J, but one peanut butter and jelly sandwich with just 2 pieces of bread doesn't really fill me up,
Sure.
So you got to go with the extra piece of bread. But I will say that my wife, she makes the better PB&J with peanut butter on both slices of bread, and she adds a little bit of butter in there. It's much more unhealthy, but it's much better tasting.
All right, Keith, PB&J draft, a peanut butter and jelly fantasy draft. You can only draft jelly, and grape is off the board. So grape's off the board. You can't graft as well. You can't draft grape jelly. What jelly do you take?
Oh, so I can't use peanut butter and jelly. It has to be like okay. I go with strawberry preserves, like have a little chunks of strawberry in there a little bit, mix it up. I think I'd go like a strawberry preserves route.
Now, Keith, I want to bring you on and talk. I wanted to bring you on and talk baseball. The home runs, the strikeouts. You're a Cubs fan. Tell me where you think they fit in the rest of this National League.
I live in Chicago now, and my wife is actually a tour guide at Wrigley Field.
Oh, okay.
So, a little bit of bragging here. She got a ring when they won the World Series. So, a huge Cubs fan.
What did you have to do to get your wife to let you wear?
Oh, she's actually really it fits my pinky finger perfectly. So I can show it off rather well, and she's very generous with letting me wear it and everything. I was always the sports fan, of course, growing up, and before working with the Cubs, she knew nothing about baseball, knew nothing about the Cubs. And, of course, she's the one of the two of us that ends up with a World Series ring. I think the Nationals have a shot. I think any team with Bryce Harper has a shot. And I think that's their last year with him. I think it's probably obvious he'll go elsewhere after this year. So they always have a shot, and I'd always be looking out for them. Knowing the Brewers and being from Wisconsin and knowing the Brewers, I think the Cubs are going to take the NL Central because, come early August, I think the Brewers are going to remember that they're the Brewers, and they'll completely blow it. I'm not trying to say that in mean spirits. It's just what the Brewers do.
Now I want to do some rapid fire questions with you, and I want you to give me your opinion. These are all baseball related, and they're controversial potentially, or they're just a hot topic in baseball. So I want you to tell me what you think. DH or no DH? Which one you like?
No DH. Because a pitcher is a baseball player, right?
Exactly. That's my argument.
Everybody's a baseball player. You got a bat. Put the bat in their hands.
There's no sport. I guess football, it's assumed everybody will play, one side will play defense, one will play offense. Basketball, they play both ways. Hockey outside of the goalie, but you can't really have a goalie skate on the ice. Baseball's a one sport where we just naturally think this one player doesn't have to do both things. It's very weird, so I agree, no DH.
Where would you rather visit, Yankee Stadium or Fenway Park?
I've been to both. I really both are different. I did not see the old Yankee Stadium, so I've only seen the new one, which is a monstrosity, and it's huge and it's beautiful and everything is brand new and shiny. So that's really cool. Fenway, obviously smallest in the league, a lot of history there. I've been on tours for both as well, but I've only seen a baseball game at Fenway, not Yankee Stadium, so I'm going to have to say Fenway because as old as it is, they've kept it up really nice. So I'll go with Fenway on that one.
Okay, all right. Ketchup on your hot dog or not? Big controversy. Well, really not in Chicago, but Chicago's got an opposite opinion as most communities. Ketchup on your hot dog or not?
Yeah, I always grew up putting ketchup on my hot dog. I'll put ketchup on my hot dog.
All right, hypothetical question, Keith. We're going to test your impersonation here. You're going to be followed an entire day by a sportscaster. He will be narrating your day. Who do you pick, and what does he sound like?
Okay. It's kind of impossible not to go with Vin Scully on that
one, right? Sure, I think you're right.
Considered the greatest of all time to do it. Oh boy, it's either Vin Scully or Bob Uecker. Obviously growing up listening to Uecker, but I think I'm going to have to go with Vin Scully. So, what would it sound like? I think it would sound something. All right, I'll go something like this. Well, fans, Hoehne gets out of the bed, takes a look around, ball low, and there's a beach ball on the outside. Hoehne gets up and he's on his way to the kitchen, going to get a cup of orange juice. Funny story about orange juice. It was created, and there you go.
Keith, okay, that was good. That was fantastic. Keith Hoehne, thanks for jumping on the podcast. I really appreciate your time. Remind people where they can find you.
Yeah, definitely. Coffee with Keith and Katie is on twice a week, Mondays and Thursdays at 7:30. That's Facebook Live on Public House Media's Facebook page. So every Monday and Thursday at 7:30, you can check us out there. And also Wednesday morning, a new version of The Cheap Seats comes out. It's me and co-host Max Wolpoff, and we talk about sports for an hour. So, yeah, there you go.
All right, big thanks to Keith for coming on the podcast. Now we have to bring on a friend of ours who's never been on the show. And I say friend because he's just a friendly guy. You know, I've not met him before until this very second. So I'd like to bring on Lazarus Jackson. I'd like to bring on Lazarus Jackson on To Completely Serious, a show where we have fun and talk sports. Lazarus wins the best tweet of the week over the fantasy, or rather over the basketball free agency period. Lazarus, can you remind us what that tweet was? It was retweeted, I think, over 100 times.
So it said Dan Gilbert's the owner of the Cleveland Cavs. His gravestone should read, that he chased LeBron James off twice. Like that is a major enough event in that man's life to where it should be on his gravestone.
A+ tweet. Very well done. Want to look at this free agency period. Boogie Cousins signing with Golden State for peanuts by NBA standards. LeBron going to LA, a couple other big moves. Where does this kind of rank with previous bonkers free agency periods that have kind of been going on for the past, 6-7 years?
So I think it's slightly behind, actually. A few years ago when Kevin Durant joined the Warriors, I think that was simultaneous. I think that's the craziest thing we'll see in quite some time. That was the confluence of a lot of different factors. The cap jumping up to a new TV deal, the Warriors winning 73 games during the regular season and losing a championship, and then adding an All-NBA level player. I don't think we'll see that topped in our lifetime.
Is it good for the league when a team like the Warriors turns into this incredible Goliath, behemoth, unbeatable, godlike team? I may be exaggerating there. You know what? No, I'm not. That's not hyperbole. That's pretty much exactly what they are.
Well, ratings are up across the NBA. The playoffs, I think, were up 8% over last year. The finals were up, I think, like 4% over last year's finals. So I think the league would say it's good for the league. What they've been doing and what the teams have been doing in free agency. As for fans, I don't know if it's the greatest for competitive balance, but the NBA has always been a league that's been dominated by superstars and the teams that they inhabit. That's been the case, ever since the league's inception. The Boston Celtics have, 17 championships because they won 11 of them with Bill Russell in the very early times of the NBA. So, is anything different or marginally different that it makes it worth changing? I don't think so. I don't see it that way. I understand why other people do, but I don't see it that way personally.
The NBA offseason is huge now. It's almost like a second season. Like basketball has captured that space between when football ends and when it begins better than anybody, of course, outside of baseball, which is already going on. Could it become like this big show, the NBA free agency period, where players maybe put caps in front of them and they pick the cap? I guess we had LeBron's big decision, but how big could this get? I picture this being this incredible Hollywood-like performance these players put on every offseason.
Like a college signing day thing? I don't know. That sounds pretty crazy to me. I'm surprised LeBron owns a media company uninterrupted. I'm surprised he didn't release his free agency decision on something like that. Sure. I think that's something you'll see in the future with more players as they branch out into other non-basketball avenues. You'll see guys announce their decisions on Instagram Live or something like that, and try and brand content and make money that way.
Okay, we're going to play a new completely serious game. It's called Never Would You Ever. It's kind of like Never Would I Ever, the very popular party game that sometimes can break friendships. But it's called Never Would You Ever. I'm going to say a hypothetical scenario, and I just want you to let me know if you would never do this. So never, we'll start off with this one, hypothetical NBA free agency scenario. Never would you ever sign Michael Beasley to a even decent contract?
Ooh, I can't say that. I fully enjoy the Michael Beasley experience. I would do that.
Never would you ever sign Rajon Rondo to a $9 million one-year contract like the Lakers did.
I would never do that. No, I would never do that. Rajon Rondo is a very divisive locker room figure. He's a very caustic personality. If you are signing him, you are hoping that when he steps up his game is in the playoffs. But when you're also signing him, there's no guarantee that your team won't implode before the playoffs start. So no, I would not give Rajon Rondo $9 million.
Never would you ever trade Kawhi Leonard just Kawhi Leonard, we'll go with that, for Lonzo Ball and a high draft pick, or even a decent draft pick, to the Lakers.
I would do that. I think people have forgotten, well, not forgotten, but fans' memories are so short. Kawhi Leonard was easily the third best player in the league when he was healthy 2 years ago. Anytime you have an opportunity to obtain a player of that skill level, you do that immediately, whatever the cost. And so, I would absolutely do that. And Lonzo Ball plays in Los Angeles, whereas a place like Kawhi has said he will resign. Definitely, 100%.
SB Nation's Lazarus Jackson dropping some knowledge. Thank you, Lazarus, for jumping on the podcast. Remind people, because you're not just on SB Nation, you're on a division of that website. Remind people of where they can find you. You got a couple things going on.
Sure. You can follow me on Twitter at LazChance. That's at LazChance. You can also follow Detroit Bad Boys on Twitter, the website I write for. It's at Detroit Bad Boys, and it's DetroitBadBoys.com. I host a podcast, the Detroit Bad Boys podcast. You can find that on Stitcher, iTunes, Art19, wherever your fine podcasts are found. Not on Spotify, though. Spotify is really stringent about podcasts, strangely enough. And, that's the best way to talk to me. I love to talk about basketball, specifically.
Well, Lazarus, we appreciate you jumping on and chatting with us. I know you'll chat with anyone, but thank you for taking the time with us. Again, find Mr. Jackson on his many platforms for SB Nation. Big thanks to him. Big thanks to Keith Hoehne for jumping on the podcast earlier. He talked baseball. Big thanks to you for tuning in. We're going to try to get back in 2 weeks. We will be back on air in 2 weeks here on Public House Media. The hope, I know for those that have listened for some time now to this podcast, is we'll get back to the weekly episodes. I'd love to jump back onto the weekly episodes where you can catch them on Stitcher, Spreaker, iTunes, wherever you're listening to this podcast. We appreciate it. We want to make this a weekly thing again when I can get my schedule in order and get some good guests and get this rolling as well. I'm thankful, though, for those that have jumped on the podcast, all those in the past and all those that have been on today as well. Very thankful for the great guests we've had on this show so far. What are we in? Almost episode 35, something in the 30s. You kind of lose track after 2 or 3. It's really how it works with podcasts. Anyway, big thanks to you for tuning in to Completely Serious on Public House Media. We'll talk with you in 2 weeks.